Hi, my name is Michael. Today I'm going to talk to you about turning your Vivitar 285 HV, which is a high voltage flash, into a full spectrum flash or a UV flash. I've converted mine currently into a full spectrum. I will be actually turning it into dedicated UV later on, but at the moment the basics are the same. So here we have the Vivitar 285 HV flash, which is quite safe to use on modern DSLR cameras, and we're going to modify it. Now, first of all, this device is a high powered device, so the first thing you want to do is discharge the battery. How I do this is I first of all set the flash to charge, and then when it is charged I release the little trapdoor on the side to release the batteries, and I push the test switch just as I release the batteries and they fall out, and it discharges the flash. This is not a guaranteed method to remove all voltage, so use other methods as well which you can find online, things like putting a globe across the capacitor and things like that, but be very careful. There is a high voltage in this, up to 300 volts. There are a few things that I have found in this flash that I've had to move around, and just to be on the safe side, what I've got myself is a wooden handled craft paintbrush, and I use the handle on this to move things around inside if I need to get near the capacitor. Okay, first thing to do is to discharge it. So taking the Vivitar and making sure it's fully charged, which it's now doing. Okay, we are now charged. So now I need to release the battery door here while holding the batteries down so that they don't actually fall out just yet. Turn it over, and just as I trigger, I've released the batteries. Next thing to do is to pull out the very power thyristor. There we go. Now the first thing I did when I got this, the first thing I did wrong, was I tried to remove this zoom component by simply pulling it off the top. Not a good idea. There's a little arm that travels inside here which controls a potentiometer inside. If you pull it off the top, you're going to have trouble putting it back together. Having said that, as you can see, I've got mine back together. Now, first thing to note is this calculator on the side here, it's not electrically connected in any way, so don't be too concerned about that. In the middle here, you've got a big barrel section that actually contains the capacitor. The thing we want to do is we want to actually get in the front here and remove the lens in front of the xenon flash tube, but we want to do it safely. Okay, on the other side here, you'll note a screw here, a screw here. There are two more under here. There's one here on the side. There's two on this side. And there's two at the very bottom as well to hold the hot shoe on. The other little secret is on the side here is usually a metal disc. I've removed that disc, and inside that is a clip, and you remove the clip to separate the two halves of the flash. So I'm not going to bore you with it. I'm going to remove this screw, this screw, this screw, these two screws, and the two at the bottom. Okay, so I've removed the two screws at the bottom, releasing the hot shoe. I've removed the screw here, 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 and here, and I'm now at a point where I can remove the side catch. On the side here, I just use a screwdriver and lift it up, and away it comes. Okay, we're now at a point where we can start pulling the two halves of the unit apart. It doesn't come easily, and it is a bit of a worry when you're doing it, but it should come apart. So I've pulled off the bottom component there, which contains behind it a small circuit board and the battery compartment. I've now lifted the capacitor section out of its little holder so that the flash is in two parts. It's still connected obviously by this cable. Now you will find an extra screw has been revealed just down here, so remove that screw. Okay, so I've removed this screw here. There's also another screw over here. Once you've undone that, off comes the top. Now in here is the capacitor. Be careful, this is what's charged, and this is why I'm using a wooden stick or a wooden paintbrush handle. In here is a little potentiometer. Now it's not electronically connected to here, but there is a little mechanical arm which attaches to the zoom, and if you had pulled this zoom straight off, you would have broken that. Now the part that we're interested in is just in front of the xenon tube, which is in here. Happens to be one of the harder parts to get to. You've got to remove this zoom head component to get to it. The zoom head component has two little white clips, one here, which makes it ratchet up and down. You've also got this arm that connects to the potentiometer to worry about. So you have to remove this zoom component by releasing the two little white clips, and there's two little notches as well, and once you've got them passed, this zoom component will come straight off. Alright, so we're now ready to remove the zoom component because the lens we want to get to is right under here. Let's start moving things around to get it released. So what I've just done is there's a little tab here that I've just gotten past the plastic shell. Another little tab here I've gotten past the plastic shell, and I've been able to move the zoom component forward. If I continue in this motion, it should release like this. And of course this is the little tiny little forked bit that you break off if you wrench it through the front. As you can see, the arm is designed not to go down the side of the flash all the way. If you have a look down the side of the flash, there's a groove here, and that's where it's designed to slide. Now I have two more screws, so let's remove those. Okay, so release those two screws, off comes the top, and now you can see the xenon light source and the lens in front. I've already removed this lens and replaced it with my own piece of plastic. I would go into all the boring details of how I removed the lens off the front of the xenon light source, but it's actually quite difficult and I had to wrestle with it for quite some time. This is the lens, as you can see, graduated, designed to disperse the light. This has got two clips on one side, two clips on the other side that fit to the front of the xenon light source, and it took quite a bit of effort to remove those. The next thing I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that there's no way I could stick my fingers in here and touch the tube or do any damage to it. So I fashioned a little window out of a piece of plastic, clear piece of plastic. The clear piece of plastic came from a CD disc plastic holder, just like this one. Basically I got the lens, I popped it down, I then got a magic marker, drew around it, I had a set square, Stanley knife, and a lot of perseverance. If you try and cut it with tin snips or with a pair of scissors, you just shatter the plastic. And be very careful, don't cut yourself. What you should end up with is a piece of plastic the same size as the outside dimensions of the lens, like that, which can slide in its place. So assembling this is just a matter of sliding this in front in there and then putting it all back together. The other thing that I did is I used some cloth tape or 100 mph tape just to cover these two terminals on either side of the xenon tube. So while I was actually wrestling with it to remove the lens off of the front of the assembly, I didn't do any damage to it or touch it. I've now removed those two pieces of cloth tape. So I've put that plastic new lens in and I'm now just reassembling. So what you're looking at now is the new plastic cover on the front there. If you're going to go dedicated UV, then this is going to be replaced with some UV glass that only lets through UV light. I've gone full spectrum at the moment, so this is just a clear piece of plastic just to protect it from the elements. Now this is the point where you want to be extremely careful. This is at the point where you could accidentally touch the capacitor. This is why, again, the wooden handle on my paintbrush. Just here, behind the calculator, is a potentiometer. This potentiometer has two plastic lugs on it. Those two plastic lugs have to fit within the fork of the zoom assembly. Doing this with your fingers is extremely dangerous because there's the terminals for the back of the capacitor. This part is extremely frustrating to fit. This little fork needs to slide over those little lugs, and this little piece of protruding plastic here needs to slide past this groove. The little notch needs to go past the little shell of the case. Same time this has to go over the top of this part of it. It's not hard to do, it's just frustrating because it keeps coming apart and moving. This is where you want to use your prod to make sure things are prodding down properly onto the little lugs back there, and you've got to persevere. I'll save you from all the bad words I'm about to say, and I'll fast forward to when I've actually got it on. But basically I'm going to get the fork on first, slide it down the side and try and push from the front. Okay, so I've now fitted the zoom assembly back onto the actual flash. Now, some things to just watch out for. Down inside here is a little metal lever and another little metal lever down here with a white lug behind it. If you can't get the zoom flash head to travel all the way back, put a little screwdriver in here and push the little metal clips back, and hopefully it'll slide. As you can see, the arm goes right back to the potentiometer. One lug is fixed to the case, one lug is free on the back of the potentiometer. The best way I found to mount it was to get the fork and point it straight down first, and then lay it back and then try and get it over the front. Meanwhile, trying to get the lugs passed over here and the little white little clips back as well. So that's now on. So I now need to reassemble and put this back together. So putting the screws back in the reverse order of how you took them apart. So there are a couple holding the central barrel together. Then of course you've got the faceplate that goes over top of that. Then the bottom bit goes on, and then the two screws in the bottom to put the actual hot shoe on. You end up with your flash fully assembled. Just make note of how you pulled it apart, put it back together the reverse, and you're done. Then you can go and enjoy a UV or a full spectrum flash.